Scanning for audio.
Welcome to a Tin Dog podcast, talking about short trips. Short podcasts for a short week about short trips. That's perfectly fine. Short trips are, as I'm sure I've talked about in the last few days, just short stories about Doctor Who, usually coming in between the half-hour and 40-minute mark. We've got a really nice one today, because although this is Series 5, they're coming out in order, so this is 5.3, which means it's a third Doctor story. A title that hits the nail right on the head. Time Tunnel. As opposed to anyone from Newcastle, where Tyne Tunnel is a completely different thing, although it's kind of cool now that they've opened up the second tunnel. I'm rambling, please forgive me. Time Tunnel is read by Katie Manning. And of course, like all of these short trips, you've got the actress and then you've got the character. And it's nice to hear them step from one to the other as they tell us our great story. This one, written by Nigel Fryers and directed by Lisa Bowman. Is there nothing this woman can't do? But regardless of how good any reading is, it always comes down to the narrative and the story. So what's this one all about? Over to the synopsis. Reports are coming into unit of trains emerging from a railway tunnel in Sussex, their passengers and drivers dead. The Doctor elects to drive a train through the tunnel himself, but when he emerges, Jo sees to her horror that he is covered in ice. Something in the tunnel has driven him close to the point of death. What can it be? Yes, we always had the third Doctor dipped in ice. I can remember at least 3 occasions off the top of my head when he ended up in a coma for no adequately explored reason. But that's fine. That's the sort of thing that the third Doctor did. And yes, repeated ideas do provide a shorthand way of producing something with a feel of a date, of reality. That's the reality of Within Doctor Who, the TV show. But you already knew that, didn't you? It's a great little story. One that has the atmosphere of something like the Demons or the Silurian stories, but it still manages to hold its own. It's well worth experiencing. So here's an excerpt, and I'll speak to you tomorrow about more short trips. Be seeing you.
Wow! Jo gasped as Bessie rounded a corner at speed. Doctor, look at that! 2 huge dark slices of rock rose before them, like a pair of fists raised towards the bright autumnal sky. Trees sprouted incongruously from the base of them both, all leaning outwards, as if centuries ago they'd been parted by the rocks as they shot upwards. But most incongruous of all was a castle-like structure that manacled the fists together, its walls and windows black with dirt, its crenellations worn with age. "It's a bit like Peladon," Jo remarked. "Except for the railway tunnel, Jo." She looked again and saw that the castle was only 1 story high, its lower half straddling a large hole in the rock face, presumably the railway tunnel that they were here to investigate. A shiver ran down Jo's spine as Bessie sped on past the tunnel's mouth and into the village.
You've been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast, available on RSS, iTunes, Stitcher, Audio Boom and Tumblr. Doctor Who and its associated works are copyright of the BBC. No infringement is intended. You can contact the show, donate, buy merchandise or find out more about my other projects by visiting the Tin Dog Podcast homepage and clicking on the links. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.